In Qing Dynasty cities, when night fell, the streets came alive with red lanterns glowing like hungry eyes. Behind those lanterns lay entire worlds of music, opium smoke and silk curtains, brothels, the empire's shadow economy. They weren't hidden in alleys, they stood bold in districts carved out for pleasure, their doors wide open to lure in merchants, officials, and anyone with enough silver. Brothels weren't just random dens of vice, they were meticulously organized businesses. At the top were the high-class establishments, ornate halls where courtesans played instruments, sang poetry, and entertained scholars before sex was even on the table. Further down the chain were the cheap houses, sweaty, cramped, filled with bodies for rent. And at the very bottom, the back rooms where boys were kept trafficked, trained, and sold like livestock. Every transaction was a contract, sometimes written, often verbal, but always binding. A customer didn't just buy sex. He bought time, status, companionship. Brothel owners calculated everything: the price of a song, the fee for a dance, the cost of touching, and the final act. Boys and girls alike were commodities. And like commodities, their value went up or down depending on their looks, their talents, and their obedience. A brothel boy's day didn't begin with freedom. It began with orders. At dawn, they were shaken awake, sometimes with a kick, sometimes with cold water. Before the city stirred, they scrubbed floors, fetched water, and served tea to their masters. While other children played in courtyards, they polished shoes and cleaned opium pipes. Childhood was stolen, replaced by servitude. After chores came lessons: music practice, singing rehearsals, memorizing poems, learning to smile without showing fear. Teachers watched with whips and rods in hand. Mistakes weren't corrected, they were punished. The boys weren't just trained to entertain, they were broken down, reshaped into property. By noon, their fingers ached from strings, their voices cracked from forced singing, and their backs bore the marks of discipline. Afternoons meant waiting. Waiting to be summoned, waiting to perform, waiting to be chosen. Some boys were paraded in front halls, painted up with rouge and silk robes. Others sat behind screens, hidden, only to be revealed if a client wanted freshness. The air was thick with incense, music, and the constant anxiety of who would be called next. When darkness fell, the nightmare began. Clients arrived drunk on wine and power. Boys played instruments, recited verses, and smiled until their faces hurt. But entertainment always bled into exploitation. They weren't paid performers, they were bodies for sale. Every laugh they forced was another wound to the soul, every touch another theft of self. Refusal was never an option. Disobedience brought swift consequences: beatings, starvation, or worse. Some boys vanished after angering the wrong client, never seen again. The others learned quickly: survival meant silence. Their pain was currency, and resistance cost too much. By dawn, the laughter outside had faded. The candles had burned low, and the boys returned to their straw mats. Some coughed from sickness, others wept quietly into their sleeves. Their pockets were empty, their bodies sore, their futures non-existent. Sleep was not rest, it was escape, until the cycle began again. The moment a boy entered a brothel, he was branded not with iron but with reputation. Society whispered of them as broken goods, boys stripped of honor before they could even understand the word. In a culture obsessed with family, purity, and filial duty, their very existence was considered a stain. Even after leaving the brothel, if they ever did, the stigma clung to them like smoke. Employers turned them away, families refused to take them back. Marriage into a respectable household was impossible. The taint of the brothel never washed off. They weren't seen as survivors, they were seen as polluted. In Qing society, masculinity meant strength, honor, and fathering heirs. But brothel boys were mocked as effeminate, half men, or worse. They were denied the very identity of manhood. Their voices trained to sing, their faces painted for clients, these things branded them as other, unworthy of respect. Every client who used them became a witness to their shame. Those same men might mock them in public after exploiting them in private. The boys had no shield, silence was their only defense. Each insult, each laugh in the streets was a reminder that they were both desired and despised. For a brothel boy, the body wasn't theirs, it was an instrument to be used, rented, and discarded. Every night took its toll: exhaustion in the bones, bruises that never healed, voices strained from endless song. Disease was everywhere. Syphilis, gonorrhea, and tuberculosis spread like wildfire through the brothel halls. With no modern medicine, these infections rotted flesh, scarred faces, and hollowed lungs. A cough could be a death sentence. And yet the boys were forced to keep working, their sickness hidden behind painted smiles. When the pain became unbearable, the brothel had its answer: opium. Pipes were pressed into shaking hands, smoke clouding the mind, numbing the body. It dulled their misery, but it also bound them tighter. Addiction made them easier to control, kept them docile, and ensured they'd never escape. The drug wasn't relief, it was another set of chains. Even when they earned silver, it never reached them. Brothel owners swallowed it all, calling it payment for food, clothes, and care. Their broken bodies were investments to be squeezed dry. Every smile, every note of a song, every touch, they were profit. And when disease or addiction finally destroyed them, the brothel simply found another child to take their place. Even if a boy somehow survived long enough to grow into a man, the brothel chains never left him. Debts kept him bound financially, while stigma bound him socially. Employers turned him away, families disowned him, wives refused him. He wasn't just trapped in the brothel, he was trapped for life. Their tormentors weren't faceless. They were officials, merchants, scholars, men who could ruin them with a glance. Every insult on the street, every mocking laugh in public, was a reminder of nights they could never erase. The exploitation didn't end with the act. It followed them everywhere, a ghost chained to their name. Most brothel boys didn't live to see old age. Many died nameless, their bodies burned or buried without ritual. Exploitation was the air they breathed, the sickness in their veins, and the legacy that consumed them. Why did it suck the most to be a brothel boy? Because they were erased twice. Once in life, when their humanity was denied, and again in death, when their names vanished without honor.